Thanks for inviting me on this session.
No, it's a pleasure. It's really great to talk to the South African people. You
Yeah.
mainly cover the South African side, I assume. Um, a really important part of our race.
Yes, yes, yes. And about today's race, why I was thinking that the distance has been increased from the final race. So why is that so?
Well, we had a final at 600 kilometers, which is a normal, traditional, longish young bird race. But our birds are yearlings. They can quite easily race 700 kilometers. The other thing, of course, is only a limited number of pigeons that can be sold. We had 966 pigeons, which, it's not a market for all of those birds, but certainly still some very good birds amongst them. So in order for Pippa and the other auction houses to have a go at the best genetics, they would look at the winners from the second race. And that's the whole idea of having a second race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And is this idea of having the enduro race gonna continue with the next season, or was it just now because we had a large number of birds coming back?
No, we planned this every year, actually. Well, not every year, but the last 2 to 3 years. But it all depends on our final race. It's the conditions are very difficult here. So we never know the numbers of birds that we will have available. You can't send the winning pigeons from the final race to another race because they need an opportunity to be able to sell those birds, and there's a chance you might lose them. So it's not a prudent thing to do to race the front runners again. But if you've got a lot of birds that haven't come in the top, obviously we have this year, we give them an opportunity to also to prove their worth. So that's the idea. So in answer to your question, yes, it might happen, but it won't be a set thing, and normally take place about 10 days, 7 to 10 days after the final race.
Yes, yes, okay. And I know now. Did you have lots of birds that were supposed to be part of the enduro race that were not activated? Because I saw that the rules, if you don't activate the bird, then it won't even be taken to paper to be sold on auction. How does that work, Geoff? How did you
Well,
get to that?
okay. Well, Pippa only selects the top birds. So they've taken 121 pigeons out of 900 odd. That's all that they selected, but they will select some more after this race. And then other birds, anything that comes back from this race will be exported to various auction houses. And then some selected birds that didn't go. So that's how it works. There are some that will be sought after. The cost of exporting and quarantine far exceeds the selling price of some of the birds. So it's no point in sending a bird out that costs you $300 or $400 to ship and quarantine, and you can only sell it for $50. Just doesn't make economic sense.
Yeah, it doesn't really make economic sense. And how's the weather today there? What do you think? How's the race going to be? Is it going to be an easy one?
No, not at all. We've
Yeah.
been following the weather for the last week. It's very stable. The weather's stable here, so you can predict it fairly accurately in advance. And the prediction that we had was a tailwind to start, a bit of a headwind to start, a bit of a tailwind in the middle for about 200 or 300 kilometers, and then towards the end, a headwind again. And that hasn't changed. But what we have noticed, the temperatures come up a bit, so it will be hot. And most of the way we'll have a headwind, but it's not strong. It's about 6 to 8 kilometers now, which will be fairly good winds. but the temperature, I think, will make the birds go down for water anyway. You know, right throughout the season, I've been saying that from the knowledge we have and from the knowledge everybody else has, a pigeon normally flies for about 4.5 to 5 hours, and then it has to drink water. But that hasn't been the case. We found that our final, we had some birds flying as much as 8.5 hours without stopping. And we only know that because we have the trackers, and we can actually look at the tracking results and see where they've stopped, if they've stopped. And so that's showing us the front runners up to now, even up to the final, the birds that came in first did not stop at all, even though it was 7.5 hours plus on the wing. They never stopped. But I must say it was cool weather on the final, it wasn't hot. It's a different kettle of fish today. Temperatures is much more, 6 degrees hotter, and it is 125 kilometers further. So we would expect them to stop and come through. We're hoping for daybirds, and you might ask when they will come. When it's a long race like that, you could be out 2 hours and still have a velocity that's not much different to what you thought it would be. But my personal feeling is about a 9.5-hour race, but they could be a bit quicker and they could be slower. But I do hope that we get birds on the day. We did liberate earlier than what we thought we could, but being further east, the sunrise is earlier than what we used to here. And the birds were up at 6:25 this morning. We did say we'd do 6:45, but they're up at 6:25.
Yes. And thanks for that information, Jeff. And what are the other new features that will come with Victoria Falls going forward?
Okay, I mean, every year we don't like to change things too much, but I think initially it's a fairly new race, 5 seasons now. We feel our way, and where we can improve, we will, but we're not going to change for the sake of changing. We're changing for the better. So as the race has progressed, in the first couple of years, we had a radical change from a summer race to a winter race. I didn't think it prudent to continue to race in very, very high temperatures, and 15, 20 years later decide, well, that's the wrong thing to do. So right at the beginning, we said, right, we're no longer going to race in summer, certainly for these races, these longer races. So we moved to a winter series, and that was the first major change. And then we've more or less doubled our figures every year. And we've changed the last 2 years. We've moved the emphasis of the race away from all the prize money and all the accolades on the final race to other competitions, one of which is the Super Ace competition. And the Super Ace has all the prestige now, well, most of it. And this year it was very well contested. We've moved our prize money on the Super Ace up to $700,000. And the Super Ace comprises of the four main races, 3 hotspots in the final, and the bird with the most points over those 4 races would be crowned the Super Ace. That particular competition, $700,000 and 360 prizes. Now people think, well, what happens if you only got 100 birds? Well, the answer to that is we will pay out all the prize money, and the birds that don't come in or haven't featured in the race, that money will be spread equally over the prizes, the positions that did get a place. So you could have you could double the money basically. Well, not really. The top prizes would just get a couple of $1,000s each more, but certainly the lower end would get quite a lot more than what was advertised. So that's the Super Ace competition. The actual final competition still had $400,000 on it and 290 positions. So it gives the opportunity for the fancier, if he's a small team fancier, he can still has a chance of picking up smaller prizes if he doesn't get in right at the top. And for the big team fancier, has an opportunity to pick up multiple prizes if he's fortunate enough. It gives it a bit more, puts more fun into it. And a lot of people have asked for that. They want more prizes, so that's what we've done. We try to get feedback from our clients and say, well, what would you prefer to do? And that's what we've done. In addition to that, we have our hotspot races. Now, the hotspots are 5 hotspots, and they increase in distance and amounts of money. We've got 125 prizes in the hotspots, and a total of $146,000 prize money on hotspots. So there's still an opportunity for people to pick up quite good payouts there. And then our team competition, which has been running, I think will be our 3rd year next year. The team competition has been changed. We had a 5-bird team this year, and you had to have 5 birds to start. Next year, we'll give people an opportunity to nominate 7 pigeons. None of these competitions cost extra money. When you pay your activation, you're in all of them except the Super Ace has a top up of $250. But in the team competition, an entrant, all people will be entered, regardless. But if you have more than 7 pigeons, you must tell us which 7 you want to nominate. If you don't, then we will select those 7 for you at random. Obviously, we'll try and be prudent, but we won't, we don't want someone to come back and say he chose the wrong bird. It's the onus is on the actual fancier to determine which birds he wants in that competition. And anyone with 5 or less pigeons will have the birds automatically entered. Now, the way it works is that you, each of the hotspot races from a certain point, I think it's hotspot 2 onwards, the first 3 pigeons count. So we will accumulate the points from the first 3 pigeons in each race. Now, if you only get 1 back, well, you'll have less points than the guy that has 3, but it's the first 3 out of your 7. You understand? So if you only get 1 pigeon back, you get only points for 1. But the one thing is, and you have to clock in every race. So if you don't get a bird timed in one of those races, you're actually eliminated. But you need to clock in each of those races, and you can clock as many. The points from 3 will be taken as the score. And the prize money for that competition is $200,000. So I think it could be quite a popular competition. We also got the Grand Averages competition, which is all your online races, which are streamed live. People accumulate points on the Grand Averages. A total of 20 prizes there for $40,000. And then we have the knockout competition, which is the remaining pigeon at the end of the day. That the first remaining pigeon that comes in on the knockout wins $10,000. You have a club competition, which is free entries. All the clubs can enter up to 5 pigeons, and they race in each of the races. The first club bird that comes in on hotspot 5 will earn a free entry, but we do give five prizes. So if your club, for instance, had to put 5 birds in, we'll only give you 1 prize. The next club would get 1, and the third club would get 1. And that's how the club competition works. And then, of course, we do run our bonus races as well, which is it's restricted to the member itself. It's an additional race they do as and when they want, and it's selected. I must say, all of this is available on an app that we have for all smartphone phones. And the app enables you to look at news. It enables you to enter bonuses. You get all the results on the app. There's a lot of features on the app, and we've got an IT development company that works with us, and they are continuing to develop new innovations all the time, and we haven't stopped yet, I must tell you. We keep going. So yeah, those are the new things. The other thing, of course, which is fairly new, but it's still being developed more, is the tracking. satellite tracking is done, and it's taught us a lot, actually. And from the information we got, we know which routes to start to train our birds and so on. So it's really available for us.
Yes, and in terms of those races, Geoff, the races you just explained now, do the birds need to be activated to go through all of those races, or are there any races that fanciers can race without activation with reserve pigeons?
Okay. All the birds are in the races right from the beginning. Their results come up, but they can't win prize money unless it's an activated pigeon. In order to enter the competitions like the Super Ace, the team competitions, and the knockouts, all of those birds must be activated at a certain time on the program. If they aren't activated, then they aren't in that competition. But the final race, of course, once a person activates a team consists of 5 pigeons, 1 activated and 4 reserve pigeons. Now, none of the reserves can win prize money, but they will still show on the results. But they need to be activated prior to the final, otherwise they're not in the final. They will be hidden or sold to somebody else. So they won't be in the race. Right, and the hotspot's the same thing. You know, only activated birds can win prize money. Yeah, but on bonus races, any bird that is under your name you can actually can enter, regardless of whether it's activated bird or reserve pigeon.
Yeah, sure. And about the 2022 race series, can you just take us through the program for the next season? As you've said, you've changed from doing the a summer season to a winter season. Also, can you just give us a few reasons why you changed between the seasons?
Okay.
Why from summer?
Okay, let me start off with the reasons why. First of all, I must say this is we changed some time ago. It was only 2 years of summer racing that we raced, and the reason is just simply too hot. We get temperatures over 40 degrees here. The pigeons can't fly. They fly early morning, and then they stop at about 9, 10 o'clock, and they sit until the afternoon. We'll come back the next day. Simply too hot. That's the reason why we changed mainly. And it's not easy for us to fit a season in that's suitable for everybody. You know, the ideal racing season for the Northern Hemisphere fanciers is a January series, December, January. And the reason for that is because that's their off time. You know, it's a lot of cold weather and people aren't racing then, and they have an opportunity to travel. You know, we looked at it and we said, we've got to put the birds first. So we couldn't race then because when it rains, it rains. We get torrential rain, and it's really a lot of rain. And it's just too hot when it's not raining. In fact, we wanted to rain in that time of the year because it cools it down, and the rain is better than the heat. So the next option after that is to go for a winter race. We can't really delay it to about March, April when the rains tail off, because we still got to train the birds. And the other thing is the body molt for your Southern Hemisphere pigeons are in full swing from the middle of January is when they start, and then February, March, they're falling to pieces. So you can't raise pigeons in those conditions. Northern Hemisphere is different, but by the time you get into April, May, June, July, all the birds are on an even playing field. They're all well molted. They're looking good. The weather is kinder. So that is the reason why we've changed. But to answer the system, you said, how do we, what is the actual program? Well, we have a fairly long intake period. The first birds arrive with us in August, and the last arrive at the beginning of December, and there's one shipment per month. and we've got given dates to our agents. They need to ship within 5 days of a certain time so that we can get all birds in, quarantined, and then out before the next shipment comes. So it's quite a long intake period. Takes us to December. And then during December, it's a breaking in period, orientation, and then we start to move into, after the molt, we start to move into training in April, May, and then we're racing from May, June, July. So it's a full circle. You know, we've got our first shipment of pigeons arriving on Wednesday this coming week, and we've got our last race today. So it keeps us occupied all year round.
Yeah. And as it keeps you occupied, I'm not sure the number of birds that were entered in the last season. Was it was it more than 7,000 birds?
Yeah, the total number of pigeons entered was 7,565, but that's into quarantine. That's the total number of pigeons that we received. Yeah.
And are you looking forward to expanding, having more birds coming in going forward?
Yeah, obviously, you know, the thing is, there is a certain limit that you can get. Well, our facilities are geared for 10,000 pigeons. We've doubled the size of the loft. We have 12,500 perches. We have 2 transporters. We have the staff. We've got a full-time veterinarian on board. We brought in a new trainer, additional trainer. We have a number of graduate trainees that we've brought in, you know, all with animal science degrees as trainees for the loft. And we have a full complement of staff. So we've got the facilities, we have the expertise. So we thought that we would, you know, our aim, as I say, is to go to 10,000 pigeons, and that's what we hope to get to.
All right, on 10,000 pigeons. Is it from the 2022 season, or is it something for the future?
No, we have to. Well, you know, every year we've progressed. I mean, we had the figures for the last 3 years I'll get for you now, but I'll just show you the progression on what we've done. It's not an easy program. You know, people mustn't think they can send 10 birds and have 10 birds at the race. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we give people an opportunity to send 4 reserves. The team consists of 1 pigeon plus 4, and if people have confidence in their pigeons, they'll activate them early. It gives them an opportunity to be in all the competitions. But on average, they were 1 out of 5 pigeons is what makes the grade at the end of the day, which is really what we aim to do. So if you look at the numbers for the last birds received, we can go back to 2019. We got 3,720, and last year we had 4,302, and this year we got 7,565. So if you take that graph and keep going, we should be over 10, but we're not going to do that. We'll stop at 10. And because we have a long intake period, if we find that the loft capacity we've got to loft capacity, we will have to cut off the last intake. But, you know, it'd be a pity because it's a lot of the good birds that come in the last intake. You know, we found our stats are showing that the birds sort of September, October, the birds are doing very well. The last intake doing very well. Not necessarily the first intake. We haven't had those birds doing as well as the others. So that's it. But, you know, we have to draw a line somewhere. So the December intake could be curtailed a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And when is your closing intake?
Each agent in each country has got specific dates, but we will get birds in November. I can get those dates for you in a minute, and I'll just mention to you, are you interested particularly for South African intakes or everybody?
Yeah, I'm just asking for everybody, but you can do it for South African intakes, not a problem. I'm just trying to get information out there as much as
Okay.
we can.
Well, the birds that we're receiving in now, the five intakes. The first intake is between the 9th and the 13th of August. The second intake is between the 6th and the 10th of September. Um, the next intake is between the 4th and 8th of October. Uh, and then one between the 1st to the 5th of November, and the last intake is between the 29th and the 3rd of December. So if you can see, these are the dates that the birds need to be delivered to us. So each agent now will determine the time that he requires for the vetting of the birds and so on. So they come in sort of 3 to 4 weeks prior to those dates is when they will be received by the various shippers.
All right. And now talking about now when we about the race now. I know there'll be fans concerned with the law with the loss of birds or birds that are not returning. Is it because of the nature in Zimbabwe, the Vic Falls? Do you have maybe probably more praise there, or is it because of the nature that Zimbabwe has for that can cause birds not returning from training?
Look, it's a question that a lot of people have asked. Um, the thing is, you find some people, we've had some fanciers miss just 80% of the birds they sent are still here. And you've got quite a number with no pigeons here. So it's, it's one must remember it's a yearling race, it's 600 Ks. We've had a lot of training, a lot of tosses. We've had the birds for a year. And I can get that figure for you now on how many training tosses we've had in total. We were training 6 days a week initially. We need to get the birds very well orientated. And then towards the end, as the distance increases, it's less. But that's not really answering your question. The birds are subjected to a lot of raptors. As the season goes on, you find they get cleverer than they are initially, and they fall prey quite easily. We have 3 different species of falcons, for instance, in the gorge below Victoria Falls, and you have quite a number of other raptors. You've got sparrowhawks, goshawks, you've got ears, um, um, the African hawk eagle, ears, hawk eagles, and they do cause havoc on our birds. So that's why I say, a team of 5 birds, if you can get one to the race, I think you're doing, that's the average actually. But some people have got more than 1 out of 5, and others have less than 1 out of 5. And it's a trend that we've seen the last 2 years. It's last year we got 19.9% of the birds to the final, and this year was 20.6% to the final. And it's not just the raptors. The winds are extremely strong on occasions here, and it's a crosswind. When the wind is blowing, you get some birds that can stay online, and you get high velocities, and everyone says, "Well, that's a blowhome." No ways is a blowhome when only a handful of birds have come through, and the rest have ended up in Namibia. You've had tracking birds in Namibia, because they get blown from the east to the west, and they end up in Zambia and so on. And when they go past or they go to the west, they have to come back into the wind. So that's not easy. So we try and select other days, which are a bit calmer weather. But when it's calmer weather, it's a north wind blowing, which is a headwind, and the temperatures are up a few degrees. It's very tough. There's water around, but it's not, every few kilometers. If you take a very highly developed countries, and South Africa's no exception. You've got a lot of irrigated farms. You've got a lot of rivers and dams and so on. And especially overseas, a pigeon can drink water almost anywhere. Yeah, they can't. And if you running a marathon, if you don't stop for your water break, your next stop is 10 k's away. You know what I mean? The pigeon doesn't think like that. He says, well, I'm not quite thirsty yet, so I'm not stopping. But he doesn't realize that there's no more until they get to the next river. But over the season, you find the birds, and this information we've got from our trackers, the birds learn to go to certain points for water. So it's, so it certainly sorts the birds out, that's for sure. So the losses will always be high.
Yeah, and as you said, you get that question most of the time of the loss of birds.
Yeah, sorry, I missed you there.
Now, I was saying, as you've mentioned, that you get that question most of the time of the loss of pigeons in the one loft.
Okay, I think it's a universal issue. I mean, lots of pigeons are. It's not easy. It's not the same as having pigeons at your house where you can give them individual attention and you've got a handful. But when you look at the numbers, actually, you know, a lot of private lofts, they start with 100 pigeons. You know, they lose 20 at a race. Doesn't sound much. You got 80 back, you lost 20, but if it's a loft of 10,000 and you lose 2,000 pigeons, it's the same percentage. But people say, how can you lose 2,000 pigeons? But it's still 20%. Now, if you look at the numbers of birds at the end of the season in any private loft, you know, if a guy ends up with 50% of his pigeons, he's a top loft. And you've got pigeons that have had individual attention and so on. You know, in a one loft, you're going to find it difficult to get that. You do get some lofts with a high percentage of returns, but I think the route is a lot easier. There's a lot of factors that are involved there. But, you know, when you look at a race like we have in this environment, and a race like the South African $1 million that used to be at Pilanesberg or at Sun City, it's not easy conditions. They're very difficult conditions. And only the strong birds come through. And you can get some really good pigeons that don't make it because they're unfortunate. You know, they hit a wire or they happen to be taken by a raptor or something like that. But there's no bad pigeons that come through, that I can tell you. So, you know, that's really what we can expect, 20%. We would like more than that, obviously. We would like about 40% at the end of the day. But, yeah. We'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, and how has the COVID had an impact on your one loft? I mean, the shipping, in terms of the shipping of pigeons in, did you have any effect to that?
Yeah, it's obviously COVID has affected everybody, and yeah, so the COVID had you know, I mean, apart from tourism and apart from the inability of our guests to come to us, it had a huge impact on the movement of pigeons around the world. I mean, we were shipping from one particular destination where they were only running a small aircraft, and they could only fit two baskets a week on the aircraft. And when they had, you know, hundreds of birds left behind every week, you know. So, you know, that had an impact, and there were a lot less aircraft as well. So, yeah, so shipping was difficult. We still got our birds, you know. It makes things a lot more difficult, but we still got them. Regarding the our local environment is... with the COVID, we had restrictions on personnel moving around. We had curfews, actually. We had to get special permission to train our pigeons, you know, to go outside curfew hours, because obviously you can't leave when the sun is up. When you've got training tasks to go, you've got to leave when it's dark. Yeah, so the COVID, yes, it had an impact, but you know what? You just have to manage what you're faced with, and we manage it. And we'll get through it eventually. Hopefully,
Sure.
hopefully by next
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. And just one last question, Jeff. In terms of the number of birds that people can enter, I know some fences might think it's not a level playing field. If I can send 5 birds, uh, because my budget allows me to send 5, and find another fencer that can send more than 100 birds. Um, I know some fans would think that it's not a level playing field where you're gonna have a higher chance of winning because you've entered a lot of birds. And how does Vic Falls ensure that levelness, despite the number of birds entered per fence? Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, I must tell you that regardless of how many birds you send, they still have to be good. I don't believe that the guy with lots of pigeons has a great deal of advantage over others. You find that there are some really, really good fanciers that can select, say, 20 pigeons from top breeders from proven pairs. Not everyone's got proven hundreds of proven pairs around. So I mean, it's not just a numbers game. Yes, the guy's got more in the race, and if you're a gambling man, you probably think that you have a better chance. But the quality of the pigeon actually is what counts. And the best pigeon at the end of the day will come from somebody, uh, whether he's got 100 birds or whether he's got 5. The best pigeon is still going to be there. And you find a small team fancier will be more selective. I must tell you, I think that 5 birds only is a little bit of a small team. You need a few more birds than that to get a fair crack at the whip. But I mean, you look at the South African fans who've done particularly well this year. I mean, I think they're probably the best. They've had the best results in terms of numbers. So, I mean, if you look at the South African fancy, they had 18 pigeons in the first 100, in the final, and they had 40 in the first 200 in the final, which is we're talking about 40 countries here. You've got one country that has 20% of the birds, which I think is remarkable. It's the type of bird, really, also that one would look for. I think the birds in the southern, or from Zimbabwe and South Africa, done really well. And there's somebody who only sent 9 birds, actually.
First person.
And how many?
First person.
Yeah. And the guy that won the race, Mitra Sovic, from Slovenia, he only sent 9 pigeons to the race. So, the theory that you send lots of birds, you're going to win it, doesn't apply, I know I just had a quick glance the other day. I haven't analysed it. Well, no one's analysed it yet. We're busy analysing. But one of the South African clubs said they still had 80% of their birds that have gone to this thing. They only sent 5, and they got 4 that went to the Enduro. So it is. If you send lots, yes, maybe you've got a greater chance of having more birds at the end of the day. But it still has to be the best pigeon, regardless. I mean, some person can send 100 mediocre pigeons. They're not going to win. So I think that's important to realize. We have tried to level the playing field to some extent, like, for instance, on the team competition. You have to be selective. You've got to select 7 birds, a maximum of 7, but some guys will only select 4 or 5. And because only 3 count in points, you still got a fair chance. So you can never go to someone and say, well, you can't send your pigeons because you've got too many. It's not fair from that point of view as well. So, you could have a specialized race where you just say everyone must put 5 birds in. I mean, that's the kind of race you do. Our race is not like that. We haven't designed it in that way.
And I'm sure you won't design it going forward as well.
No, not really. I mean, I wouldn't like to sort of predict what we're going to do going down the line, but there's a limit to how many birds you can send, and it may be a situation where if you've got 10,000 birds and one fancy wants to put 5,000 birds to the rest, I mean, that's ridiculous. You would have to say, hang on, you can't do that, But yeah.
And now, what on that note, Jeff, what advice can you give to all fanciers entering Vic Falls or one loft racing, maybe to better their chance of being in the top 10? I know genetics is very important, but are there any tips that you can give fanciers that are looking forward to achieving at the one loft race, especially in Zimbabwe with the weather that you have down there?
Yeah, I think one important thing to realize is that apart from preparation of the pigeons, you can get the best genetics in the world, but if you don't prepare your birds properly, they're off. They have a very bad start. Birds must be vaccinated at a young age. They must be looked after well. They must be nutrition must be right. They mustn't be sent at too young an age. I prefer birds that's probably 60 days old. They need to have a good start. But the second thing is genetics is important. It must come from proven genetics. You can't just test. A lot of them, I know for a fact, I've been told, a lot of people are testing their birds by sending them here. I mean, if you want to win the race, send from proven birds. And if you look at the winners that have come out, a lot of the winners that we're getting now, particularly in things like Super Ace, have been bred from birds from this race. People are buying birds from this race, and those are the birds that are scoring because they're the right birds for the race. It's you can get birds from a friend, or you can buy birds on the internet with pedigrees and so on. They've done nothing. They've not shown you anything, and it's very rare to get a super pigeon, 1 in 100 maybe, a real super pigeon, and maybe 5 sort of good pigeons, 5, 7 good pigeons out of 100. You got to find which are the good pigeons. If you know your proven pairs, send those birds. Send fewer birds, but better quality pigeons. That's my advice.
Your ultimate tip that you can give fans is joining the Vic Falls, who want to get better achievements going forward, and people who want to get it right. I know you started mentioning about genetics and getting birds from that race because they're the right birds. And also, there were fences that are sending birds there to test their birds and so forth. You were still on that note, giving that advice to people watching.
Yeah, right. I've done quite a lot of traveling prior to COVID, and most people ask me what type of pigeon you must send to the race. I mean, it's very simple. You send good ones, don't. And I tell you, a good pigeon will fly regardless of whether it's a high wind or a headwind or whatever. They're good pigeons. And one thing that we found, it's unbelievable the information we've got out of our tracking. The bird that wins a race, not the pigeon that flies the fastest. It's the pigeon that flies in the shortest route. We've got our tracking lines up, and we've got some birds that deviate and they'll fly an extra 30, 40 kilometers from 150 kilometers toss because they're going a big arc. And you look at the speed on the tracks, they're the same speed as the guy that comes in first. The difference is the guy that comes in first is the pigeon flies straight. And when you've got a strong side wind or crosswind, even if it's a high velocity, you've got birds that stay on line. And the birds that stay on line are going to be the winners. And in my mind, I think it's the clever pigeons. And those same birds are there regardless of whether they've got a strong side wind or a headwind or whatever. You've got to qualify that to some extent, because if a pigeon doesn't have the good physical attributes, after about 5 or 6 hours, they're gonna go down because they're just physically not strong enough. But they might be clever. So what you want is clever, strong pigeons, and you only find that from proven genetics, the ones that have produced the goods before. And generally, your birds that are flying in front are the clever pigeons. That's my view anyway.
Yeah. And do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, look, I mean, you're covering everybody. I mean, wider field in South Africa, but South Africans have done exceptionally well this last year, and he's really grateful for their contribution. I mean, grateful for everybody's contribution, but South Africa's done very well, and it was good to see them really coming up. And we hope to see some more birds coming in. We know that movements of pigeons have not been easy, but we're getting around that. So we should be able to get pigeons. So, and I'll just say, good luck for those that are participating today. It's not going to be an easy race, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Geoff, for your time and allowing me to be on this online session with you. Also, together with the Victoria Falls team, we thank you for doing the good job with the One Loved race, especially coming from Africa. You know, I know we don't have a number of One Loved races in Africa. I think Vic Falls is one of the biggest, if I'm not mistaken, and it's one of the most experienced One Loved race in Africa and the world at large. And to everyone watching, I'd like to urge them to follow Pigeon Duiwe News TV. We on YouTube as well. Our aim is actually to it's a web series where we visit different fanciers and get to know their performance and their programs and etc. So I'd urge people to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and follow the channel and give us more news. And I know going forward, Jeff, we've also, I think you've added me to your news subscription. Then news from the Victoria Falls will also be found on our platforms as well, the Pigeon Devon News TV. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope to
Thanks a lot.
speak to you again.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye bye.